Thank you, Lisa. And we'll hold questions also for you and invite Dr. Alain Pratt to come up. He is with the Global Fund and is going to be talking about managing risks and benefits in medicine systems. So welcome, Alain.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon. It's already a great pleasure for me, and I thank the organizer for this very interesting conference from my point of view. I'm very proud to be here and will try to pass my message as expected and as discussed with the organizer. So I just maybe supplement a little bit my biopic because so I've passed 10 years in at the manufacturing side for pharmaceuticals, 10 years as a senior GMP inspector for the French National Medicine Regulatory Authorities, and inspecting also quality management system for in vitro diagnostics, and 8 years working for WHO in the Essential Medicine Department, assessing national medicine regulatory authorities, mostly in low and middle income country. And I think I have the privilege to have assessed maybe 2/3 of the national regulators in Sub-Saharan Africa. 3 years in the Global Funds, and I'm in charge of the quality assurance of the Global Fund. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, thank you. I just recall here our mission and our, I would say, value that we have articulate regarding this specific team. I think it's a young team. We have a little bit more than 1 year and a half. It doesn't mean that quality assurance was important for the Global Fund, but it means only that we have now a specific equip that is working on these topics. So you have here our main value driver. I think ensure the products are procured with Global Fund funds are safe and efficacious and of assure quality. Support the introduction of innovative products through our specific process, which will expert review panel. Availability of the supply and compliance, because also we are in charge of designing the QA policy, supporting the implementation, but also verification of the implementation in countries with, I would say, the data that we have collected. So another important point that maybe I would like to raise based on the discussion that we have also all the day, the Global Fund is a very specific institution, and probably it is the first institution that I've worked in where we have a risk management department. And you will find a lot of information. All information are made publicly available. And as a quality assurance responsible person, I have to review all the risks which are related to the quality of health products. Health products mean for us pharmaceutical, in vitro diagnostics, condoms, health pesticides, and very other limited things. In this exercise of risk management of the health products quality, I think we have to review the whole scope of our activities, the whole scope of our products, and try to identify where we have our risk. And here it's a real risk management. It's not, I would say, risk prioritization. And the quality assurance policy and other quality assurance requirements are for us the first risk mitigation measure that we have, I would say, implement in our institution. So currently we have identified from the QA perspective two, I would say, main risk. And the first one which will be the one that I will present here, and I think, and the other one is related to the quality of health, essential medicine, and the risk of antimicrobial resistance at a later stage. So I don't know. Okay. So when we discuss, when we have this preliminary discussion, I decide to have a specific, I would say, angle and specific focus. This is a story related to pharmacovigilance, and it is specific because we as the Global Fund, we are acting in a, I would say, global market with a lot of uncertainty and no, I would say, regulatory environment. Most of the time we are in a kind of contractual arrangement between our recipients of the funds, the manufacturers that we are procuring, and so on. So there is an analysis that of an observational study in Botswana identified safety issue for one of our antiretroviral drugs, dolutegravir. I think most of you are aware of this event. The findings identified 4 cases of neural tube burst defect out of 426 women. You have here the rate compared to the other treatment and also for HIV-negative women. So for the sake of the presentation, I'll recall this, what is neural tube defects, but I think you don't need really this. And the preliminary data that we receive and the investigation that we receive suggests that the potential safety issue arises for women exposure to DTG at the time of the conception. So probably it is between the first and the 2 or 3 months, it depends on the literature. So this is the events we face in the middle of 2018. In this period, DTG is still, but was a very promising medicine, faster action, less toxic, more robust treatment, potentially cheaper, with a lot of millions of US dollars of savings, and increase for us the treatment for around 5 million of people. Just to give you an idea, probably our grants distribute last year 4 billion of US dollars. And probably as a whole, we procure with our funds 2 billion of health commodities, pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, and so on. The products was US FDA approved, EMA approved, and some generic manufacturers were approved by WHOPQ. As per our Global Fund Quality Assurance Policy, the DTG is eligible for procurement with the Global Fund because it is stringently assessed. And this is the main requirement of our QA policy, that we are relying on stringent regulators that are listed in part of the QA policy, mostly US FDA, EU regulators, TFDA, not TFDA, Canada, FDA, and Australian, TGA. So all these are considered as stringent, and we rely on them where we can procure these products. As consequence of this drug safety communication from the major regulators providing safety recommendation, we have also in our process to issue what we call QA information notice to all the Global Fund recipients. For your information, at that time we have 25 countries that were impacted, something around 70,000 bottles of dolutegravir. It's around 3 million of tablets distributed in 25 countries. We just rely on the regulators, and we most of the time cut and paste the information on the safety that we retrieve from them, and we disseminate in a more maybe educational way to the recipients. And the recipients are in charge of forwarding this to maybe their national regulatory authorities or the procurement agent in order to act or to conduct some activities that we can recommend. So what can we conclude on this? And I think this is also the message that I have passed to my hierarchy at the end of 2018, in order for them to consider, to think about, or to revise maybe the risk that we face regarding introduction of innovative medicine. So as you know, there is nothing very new here. Innovative medicine brings added benefit, but also uncertainty. This uncertainty is inherent to our limited knowledge of the products during the development and the clinical trials. And in this case, it is true that we have very limited information on the pregnant woman, of course. And also there is some uncertainty regarding co-treatment with TB medicine. Most of the time, in mature regulatory settings, FDA or EMA provide, I would say, a specific package to manage the risks that are still remaining. It can be registry exposure, post-authorization safety studies. Robust regulators can rely on robust pharmacovigilance system, which is intensified for some innovative molecules. This allows them to, I would say, have early identification of safety signals because they are collecting much more adverse drug reaction. Where innovative products are marketed in mature health systems, health practitioner personnel are trained, patients are informed on the risk. So we are relying on this system. In our country, I would say developing country, the grant funds improve to a great extent the access to this innovative medicine for an increased number of patients. However, this medicine may lead to an increased risk of emerging adverse drug reaction. I would say I can translate it only by a volume effect. If you increase drastically the number of medicine that you provide to the patient, you may have some emerging adverse drug reaction and emerging signals. The problem is in our developing country is that regulators are not sufficiently mature or have poor pharmacovigilance system in place, and this is what we have here all the day. Moreover, in a lot of cases, the risk management plans that are, I would say, envisaged by the mature regulators are not always in place, and it is an euphemism because they are most of the time not in place. Or they may not be considered as adequate in our low and middle income country environment. In the case of dolutegravir, I can see one regulator that asked to change the instruction for use. Why, I don't even sure that the people that are receiving my medicine read the instruction for use. I'm sure that they are not looking at this. Healthcare provider may not be adequately trained and patients sensitized to pharmacovigilance. So I think this leads to a limited capacity to detect safety signals in a timely manner, increasing exposure to an increased number of patients in case of risk. I don't want to read. The last but not least is in the past, innovative medicine were put first on the market in countries with mature regulatory systems, and they reach low and middle income country market at a later stage. To some extent, in the past, developing countries were benefiting on drug safety data collected from robust regulatory system and assessed by stringent regulators. At present, numerous novel products are developed in order to treat diseases which are specific to the developing countries. And they are introduced earlier in those countries than in the mature settings. Without intervention from our side, this is the point of the Global Fund, this might increase the number of patients exposed to emerging risk and seriously undermine the global effort to provide new treatment options to patients, which is our goal from the Global Fund perspective and the goal of everybody. This is just, I didn't put any value, but it is just, from my perspective, where lies also the risk. So I don't have any idea, to be honest, what is the level of, in mature settings, the safety issue may be identified. But moreover, I don't have any idea of when it would be identified in my developing countries. I say my because I'm concerned. What is also important is that you will see that where the innovators is authorized, we have also at global level some interesting mechanism that can allow for a lot of generic or several generic manufacturers to manufacture the innovative products. This will scale up I would say, in a good way, because it will increase access, but it will scale up the number of products that will be provided to the patient. In the last case of the DTG, I didn't take DTG, dolutegravir, on purpose. This is the reality of the events. You can imagine that because the products give its effects for the first or 2, maybe 3 months during the pregnancy, we may have the result or the impact after 8 or 9 months. So this might delay also our ability to identify the signals. I'm just crossing my finger that it will not happen, but that's it. So this, just to bring you this perspective, I think I just here to confirm that Global Fund will continue to support introduction of innovative medicine, which is a cornerstone of its strategy. And we will go for it. With my other colleagues as quality assurance team lead, I'm sometimes seen as a barrier for access. But I just claim that I'm here for continuous improvement and risk assessment. We have to learn from this lesson from a Global Fund perspective, and maybe we have to think about our initial risk assessment. It is not the risk assessment of these particular products, it's the risk that we are taken in supporting this kind of medicine. We have to consider this. We have to consider our current practice and improve our internal process in communicating this new information. Is sending to all the PR this safety notice, is there any impact? To what extent do people understand what they have to do? They have to go back to the program and send to the program this information. Say, okay, as this information is passed, don't use this medicine for this time. To what extent we have an impact is still questioning, and I think we have to conduct some study to see to what extent we have changed the practice. We have to provide support to countries and to external partners, because we are not a technical agency. We are just, I would say, a bank, and we receive the funds from countries and we give it to countries that are in need. But I think we have, for the last 2 years, some funds that are dedicated, given by the boards, for some kind of activities. And one of the activities that we have envisaged, with around, I would say, 1.5 million of US dollar, will be to support the pharmacovigilance in country where we will, I would say, procure this medicine. And we hope that we will have an impact, or we are working on this to have an impact. But I think I can come back to the ideas of performance of regulators later on, because it is my baby. But it is interesting, the question of performance is, what is the performance that we are thinking? If you look at the report of all the mature regulators, the main performance they have is that they decrease the time to register the medicine. This is their focus. So did they, I would say, support patient safety? To what extent? Did they save life? But they decrease the time. So, and by this, I know exactly what are their customers. Their customers are the manufacturers. First, or maybe not, I should not say this. So, and to support external partner, and I think we will support the pre-qualification, and we will continue to pre-qualify medicine that will help us to provide and increase access to the patient. The last point is to sensitize the global community, and to some extent, this is what I'm trying to do. Thank you very much.